Hello everyone, this is Under the Covers, and I am your host, the Dirty Dungeon Master. This week, we are going to do a review of Ravenor's Omnibus by Dan Abnett. This is the first Warhammer 40k book that I read, and getting into the series was not easy. I ran into words like cogitator, hive, or servitor, and I was just kind of confused, so I had to look up those things. But once you get over the initial, shock of running into these words and you look them up, then getting into the series is not a big deal. So if you're a fan of Warhammer 40k and haven't yet dipped into Dan Abnett's Ravenor series, this omnibus is a great place to start. It compiles the three main Ravenor novels, The Raven's Flight, The Raven's Eye, and The Raven's Curse, along with several short stories that give you an even deeper look at the protagonist and the universe that he inhabits. Dan Abnett, the author, is a cornerstone of Warhammer 40k fiction. His writing has brought the grim darkness of the far future to life, and he's particularly praised for adding depth and humanity to a universe defined by endless war. Some of his notable works include the Gaunt's Ghost series, the Eisenhorn trilogy, the Ravenor trilogy, and he's also done a couple books in the Horus Heresy series. So most of the Warhammer 40k books are about Space Marines, or the Adeptus Astartes. What are these? These are larger-than-life super soldiers from the Warhammer 40k universe. You have to think of them as humanity's ultimate defenders, or genetically enhanced warriors designed for one thing, and that's war. They all start as regular humans, and they're usually chosen from super tough or brutal worlds, like death worlds. But then they go through this insane process where their bodies and minds are completely transformed. They're implanted with all these special organs which make them stronger, faster, tougher, and even able to shrug off wounds that wouldn't kill a normal person. By the end of it, they're more like living weapons than regular humans. Space Marines are grouped into chapters, kind of like big warrior brotherhoods, each with its own personality and traditions. For example, the Ultramarines are all about discipline and order. The Blood Angels are noble, tragic warriors with a dark curse. And the Space Wolves are basically space Vikings who fight like wild beasts. Their gear is pretty top-notch too. They wear power armor, which is this massive armored suit that not only protects them but also makes them even stronger. Their main weapon is their bolt gun, or bolter, which doesn't just shoot regular bullets. It fires mini explosives that basically turn enemies into paste. They're basically humanity's protectors. They're kind of terrifying, and a lot of the books are about the Space Marines, and in the Ravenor series, it takes a completely different turn. The central character, Ravenor, is a former Inquisitor who's been left physically crippled by an unfortunate accident. But don't let the wheelchair fool you. Ravenor is still as sharp as ever, and his mind is his greatest weapon. He's a brilliant investigator with a unique and sometimes morally ambiguous way of doing things. It's this blend of cerebral tactics and ruthless pragmatism that makes him such an interesting lead. He's not just a warrior, he's a thinker, a strategist, and a man dealing with the limits of his body and the complexities of his role in the Imperium. Abnett's writing is as always top-notch. His skill at world-building really shines, capturing the bleak, grim-dark nature of the 40k universe while focusing on the psychological and emotional tolls that war, power, and duty take on individuals. The action sequences are intense, but it's the quieter moments, Ravenor reflecting on his past, his relationships with his team, his internal battles that really ground the story and give it depth. Speaking of Ravenor's team, the dynamics between them are another highlight. They're not just sidekicks or expendable henchmen. They're fully fleshed out characters with their own arcs and personalities. There's a lot of trust, tension, and camaraderie, which adds an extra layer to the story. It's always a treat when an author doesn't just focus on the protagonist, but gives importance to the people around them as well. As with all Warhammer 40k stories, there are plenty of moral quandaries. Ravenor himself, while mostly working for the good guys, in the sense of the Imperium's often harsh and morally gray stance, is far from perfect. He's willing to make hard choices, often with collateral damage, which keeps you questioning just how right any of his actions really are. One of the key themes of the Omnibus is the exploration of the limitations of power. Ravenor's own condition forces him to rely more on his intellect and psychic abilities than on brute force, which is a nice contrast to some of the more physically dominant characters in the 40k universe. This helps keep the story fresh and adds layers of complexity as Ravenor faces opponents who might be stronger or more ruthless than he is. If you're into the gritty, morally ambiguous side of the Warhammer 40k universe and appreciate a good detective story with a side of psych or intrigue, Ravenor's Omnibus is a must-read. Abnett's prose is engaging, the plot is compelling, and the characters are more than just soldiers in a war-torn universe. Ravenor himself is a character to follow through the darkness of the 41st millennium. And if you enjoy his journey, you might just find yourself drawn to other parts of Abnett's work as well. Overall, it's a thrilling, thought-provoking read that balances action, mystery, and moral dilemma with all the deep, immersive world-building fans of Warhammer 40k expect. Definitely worth picking up if you're looking for a strong, character-driven story in the Warhammer universe. The Raven's Flight. In the first book, we meet Ravenor, a former Inquisitor who's now physically limited by a severe injury. He's stuck in a wheelchair, but don't let that fool you. His mind is sharper than ever, and his psychic powers are still top-notch. He's tasked with tracking down a rogue psyker named Kymor, and it's not long before things get dark and complicated. Ravenor and his team dive into the underworld of the Imperium where they have to deal with deadly cults, shady deals, and the ever-present question of how far they're willing to go to protect the Emperor's will. It's a gritty, fast-paced start that sets the stage for the moral dilemmas that follow. In the second book, The Raven's Eye, Ravenor investigates a series of mysterious deaths connected to a dangerous psychic artifact, the Blackstone. This artifact has the potential to wreak havoc, and Ravenor's team needs to figure out who's pulling the strings behind the chaos. As the investigation deepens, Ravenor finds himself tangled in a web of political intrigue, facing off against powerful enemies, and once again questioning the cost of justice. This book dives deeper into the relationships between Ravenor and his team, particularly his rocky dynamic with Carl Thonius, who becomes more integral to the mission. It's a lot about trust, loyalty, and the gray areas between good and evil. In the third book, The Raven's Curse, Ravenor faces his most dangerous foe yet, a powerful and twisted psyker named Quirion, whose destructive abilities are threatening entire worlds. As Ravenor hunts Quirion down, the stakes couldn't be higher. He's pushed to the limit, forced to make tough choices that challenge everything he believes in. This book really explores the toll Ravenor's life as an Inquisitor has taken on him, mentally and emotionally. There are some big revelations about his past, and the story culminates in a showdown that forces Ravenor to confront some uncomfortable truths about himself and his role in the Imperium. Taken together, these three books form a gripping, emotional ride that blends mystery, action, and moral ambiguity. Ravenor might be physically broken, but his mind and will are as strong as ever, and watching him navigate the grim-dark world of Warhammer 40k is both thrilling and thought-provoking. It's a deep dive into the toll that power, duty, and the search for justice can have on a person, and if you like morally complex characters, you'll probably be hooked. This is Under the Covers, and I am the Dirty Dungeon Master.